Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lunar Raisins Network. Today we'll be breaking down the Week 1 performances of all of our teams that played, and we will also be giving the new power rankings heading into Week 2. Today I am joined by Mitchell Lamy. I would say it was a pretty standard day, Mitchell, in terms of Week 1 performances. I don't think there were any big upsets or anything. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the picks. I think that you and I have the same at number 1. They are 1-0 in the season thus far. That would be the Moisture Farmers, Aiden and Trace. Yep. All right, so then at my number 2, I have the Carrots. Carrots actually lost to the Moisture Farmers. They were my number 1 pick heading into the preseason. That's Jack and John, both very competitive, both highly athletic, both quick. But they did end up falling to the superior performance of Aiden and Trace.
As my number 2, I have you and Carson.
Okay.
And I actually have Jack and John as number 3 because even though you guys are both super tall, you were really able to keep the ball low somehow. No clue how. But you guys were able to score a bunch. I mean, you had a pretty easy lineup this week because both teams you played were kind of still getting into the groove of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that team could be pretty deadly.
I will say I have me and Carson at 3 still. I didn't move us from last week's rankings, and that was because, as you said, the teams that we were playing were still getting into the swing of things, and I didn't want to go ahead and overhype what Carson and I did today. If you look at points scored by the Hitmen have scored a total of 84 points for them and only have 45 against, and so that's very nearly a 2-to-1 ratio of point scoring there.
Yeah, and that's the best point scored to against ratio so far.
Mm-hmm.
Although Moisture Farmers have scored 44 with only one set.
That's
so
true.
They still have another makeup game coming up on Memorial Day.
Right.
So we'll see how much they score there.
Right, and one of the reasons why theirs is higher is actually because they went to overtime against the Carrots this week.
They did. Yep.
Yeah.
23 to 21 was the final score of that.
Man,
game.
23 to 21. So that means that they tied at the game point of 21 and had to play it out because you always have to win by 2 in the league.
I have Jack and John, the Carrots, because even though it was John's first time playing, he has that natural athleticism, and Jack has played a couple times before, so he knew what he was doing. So together they were really good. They were able to keep the ball high, so they could make good passes.
Right.
And then with Jack's power, he just spiked it into the net every single time.
Right. Jack has a lot of inherent power, and he does have a really good hand-eye coordination for those big spike moments. Going on to number 4, though, so these next 2 teams on my list haven't played yet, which is why I haven't really moved them too much. Although I will say the Defaulty Boys fell a little bit just because I hadn't seen them play. That's you and Braden. So I have the Commandos at 4 and the Defaulty Boys at 5. They have yet to play. They will be playing some makeup games on Memorial Day morning as part of their Week 1 because they were not able to make it to this event.
As my 4 and 5, I also have the Commandos and Defaulty Boys. I do have Defaulty Boys ahead of the Commandos, but that's just because I've seen Johnny play a couple times. I haven't seen Andrew play. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I know Braden's played a couple times, and I've played quite a bit. So I think we have a little bit of experience going into it, but we'll see.
Oh, for sure.
It's kind of hard to tell right now.
Yeah. And then next up, I had Quarantine Kings. That would be Holden and Pete. I have them in the same spot as last week here. I think that they're just a little bit stronger than the other 2 teams below them. They had a good showing against the Carrots today, against Jack and John.
And I believe they might have almost won that game.
Game or match?
Both games were close. They didn't actually win either games, but both were coming down to the wire. One went into overtime. I also have Quarantine Kings as number 6.
Gotcha. Yeah. So then my last 2 teams, I actually swapped them from last week. Last week I had Jacob Weed and Josh Mickey at 7. Jacob Hong and Caleb Culp I had at 8, and Jacob Weed and Josh Mickey I had at 7. I actually went ahead and swapped them because Jacob Hong's performance today was really good, just the way that he sold out for the ball. And then I have doubts as to the consistency of the Tropics, that being Jacob Weed and Josh Mickey. We'll see how they can get along. Today we did have a free agent signing for that team. We did have Soldier Gun signed on with the Tropics for this week due to one of the members of the Tropics being absent.
Yeah, I actually have, on my power rankings, I actually have them swapped. and Jacob Hong, they were both new to the game. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So they're still learning. They're still getting the swing of things. They're still learning how to play as a team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when week 3 comes around, I think they'll be a way better team than what they are today.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think all these teams have room to grow. All these teams will continue to get better as the season progresses. But as of right now, I will say that the Moisture Farmers and the Carrots are still looking like the 2 strongest teams in the league.
They're looking very strong.
And notable news, Soldier Gun, when he did come in as a free agent for the Tropics today, he did do very well in terms of actually keeping that ball low and scoring points.
Yep. I don't think we have him in the stat sheet yet, but when we do, I believe he scored, I think it was 5, so he'll be a little way up there. He'll be tied for 5th place in points scored.
Going through the players that scored the most points this week. At number 1, and this isn't really much of a surprise, especially just considering what I was expecting. Number 1, we have Jack, who scored 16 points.
Yep. It seemed like it was a lot of passing to Jack this first game, and Jack would just spike it into the net as hard as he can.
Right, yeah.
So leaving the other team defenseless.
Yeah. So, Mitchell, do you mind just breaking down for the viewers exactly how these points are calculated? Because if you look at the players' points scored, they don't quite add up to how many points were scored in the game.
So the way the points are scored is basically when somebody hits it off the net and the other team isn't able to either get to it or they're only able to hit it once. But once the other team starts passing it to each other, it no longer counts as the last person who hit it point.
If a player didn't earn that point, the point is not credited to them.
Exactly.
Right, and I think that's fair. It's a good expression of skill. So at the number 2 slot under Jack with 16, Carson Slater of the Hitmen is up next with 11 points scored. And I will tell you, he was an absolute machine.
He was able to keep the ball very low, which was surprising because he is one of the tallest players.
Mm-hmm.
But he was able to keep it super low, which made it super hard for his opponents to return it.
Right, for sure. And then number 3 was myself with 10 points. Another member of the Hitmen up there in the top 3. We're going to round out with the 4 and 5 slots. At 4, we actually have Holden of the Quarantine Kings. He scored 7 points, even though they had a very hard schedule today.
Yeah, I wasn't able to watch that game, but I know him and Pete do have pretty good chemistry. They played before. They played together before.
Right.
And it seemed like Pete was doing more of the setting up, passing it, so Holden was just able to get some easy points.
Rounding out the top 5 here, we actually have Caleb Culp with 5 points scored.
He was able to keep it pretty low as well, which caused a little bit of problems for the Hitmen because they're both very tall players. Mm-hmm. He was able to keep it low. He wasn't on his A game today. It was one of his first times playing, I believe. Mm-hmm. So he didn't have a ton of experience, but he was still able to make 5 points. So I can tell in the next couple weeks when he gets better, he might be a threat.
So looking ahead to the week 2 matchups here, this is going to be the last little segment before we end. So week 2 matchups, I have my eyes on the Hitmen versus Moisture Farmers because that's going to be a huge set. I have a feeling there's going to be a pretty good rivalry between the Hitmen and the Moisture Farmers coming up next week. You and Braden next week will also be facing down the Carrots, which will be interesting.
That might be a good game because I haven't seen Braden play, but I know he has a little bit of experience, so hopefully we'll be able to do something there. But the Carrots, I think, are only going to keep getting better and better.
I agree with you, yeah. So we'll see how the league continues to develop.